Laws
Laws
of
of
War,
War, a
a
webinar
webinar on
understanding
understanding the Geneva Conventions of 1949 in the contemporary world. As law students, we have been immersed in a complicated and vital field of legal study concerning the conduct of armed conflict and the defense of people who are not or are no longer involved in hostilities as we study international humanitarian law. There is no better way to wrap up the material covered in this course than with a webinar. Thus, we will be listening to our guest speaker tonight as he expands on our understanding of the subject. May I now request everybody to please settle down as we invite God's presence in our midst through prayer. After the opening prayer is the singing of the national anthem. Apologies for the technical issue. We will try to replay again the prayer. May we call on Mr. Asnawi Bashir to please lead the prayer.
Kaya di ba? Na? 𝐔𝐬𝐚𝐚𝐧. Hello, narinig ko? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Ya Allah, we ask for your we ask that you grant us beneficial knowledge in this webinar. Thank you.
Akbayan ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Thank you, everyone, to give us the welcoming remarks and the introduction of the keynote speaker for this program. May I now call on Ms. 𝐔𝐬𝐚𝐩𝐚 𝐧, the class representative of third year Arellano.
Good evening, everyone. Our Professor Prosecutor Lauren Lau, our esteemed keynote speaker, Attorney Alman Najar L. Namla LLM, to my classmates and schoolmates, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. First of all, I would like to extend my warmest welcome to all of you for joining us tonight in this webinar entitled The Laws of War, a webinar on understanding the Geneva Conventions of 1949 in the contemporary world. This webinar aims to discuss and enlighten us on the significance of the conventions in the current Israeli-Palestinian and Russo-Ukrainian conflicts. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon. Our keynote speaker is the Provincial Director of the Bangsamoro Human Rights Commission, Basilan Provincial Office from 2020 to present. He leads the provincial office in the promotion and protection of human rights in Basilan, oversees the implementation of human rights programs and initiatives, and coordinates with various stakeholders to address human rights issues. He's also a lawyer at NAMLA Law Office from 2017 to present. He provides legal services and representation to clients in various legal matters, specializing in human rights, constitutional law, and other relevant fields. He's also a law professor at Ateneo de Zamboanga University, Rosendo U. Castillo Jr. College of Law from 2017 to present, teaching Constitutional Law 1 and 2, Political Law and Human Rights, as well as in Western Mindanao State University College of Law from 2021 to present, teaching Constitutional Law 1 and 2. He is also a visiting lecturer at the National Police College, Philippine Public Safety College, Philippine National Police Training Institute, and Regional Training Center, Region 9 from 2021 to present, teaching Constitutional Law 1 and 2. Attorney Namla is also the host for Usapang Karapatan from 2023 to present. It is a show that discusses legal rights and issues with guests and engages with experts and the community to raise awareness on various legal topics. He graduated his Juris Doctor degree from Xavier University Ateneo de Cagayan in 2016 with major achievements and honors, and his Master of Laws from San Beda University, Manila in 2023 with major achievements and honors. He is a member of the Integrated Board of the Philippines and the convener Vice President, Muslim Lawyers in Zamba Sulta. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our keynote speaker for tonight, Attorney Attorney Alman Najar L. Namla LLM.
Is he speaking? Because I can't hear him.
Good evening po, Prosec. Not yet pa po.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible now? I'm so sorry. Thank you for the warm welcome, Miss Janica. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yes po,
Okay.
Attorney.
Thank you for that. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuhu. And good afternoon. First and foremost to our professor, to the professor of this class, the Honorable Prosecutor Lauren Halilalau, to the third year International Humanitarian Law students from MSU College of Law, Iligan Extension. And of course, to our viewers, this is also being live streamed so that my students in the Ateneo de Zamboanga University and Western Mindanao State University Colleges of Law can also participate in this webinar. My name is Attorney Alman Najar Namla. I am the Provincial Director of the Bangsamoro Human Rights Commission and a law professor specializing in constitutional law and human rights. Our work focuses on human rights education, human rights protection, and as much as possible, we try to ensure that the principles of human rights are upheld and understood in various contexts, especially in areas affected by conflict like our region. So today's webinar aims to provide a comprehensive understanding of the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and their relevance in contemporary conflicts, as stated by Ms. Janica, particularly the Palestinian conflict and the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. So the IHL and the BHRC, I would just like to share before we get started. Under our charter, the Bangsamoro Autonomy Act number 4 or the Bangsamoro Human Rights Act of 2019, it specifies there that during armed conflict, the Commission shall uphold international humanitarian laws. That's why we exert effort in talking about international humanitarian law, whether it be with civilians, whether it be with the security sector, and even outside BARM like today. Like in this picture, as you can see, we engage with our armed forces of the Philippines in Basilan. We talk about the rules of war. So ang sabi nga namin doon, even wars have rules, di ba? Sabi nila, all is fair in love, in war, in love. Pero we have rules, specific rules to follow. So the importance of the Geneva Conventions, this is just a review. I know this is an IHL class, but for the benefit of all, I wish to talk about the importance of the Geneva Conventions. So by history, as you all know, a Swiss businessman, Henry Dunant, went to visit wounded soldiers during the Battle of Solferino in 1859, and he was shocked by the lack of facilities, personnel, walang medical aid to help yung mga wounded soldiers. And he also saw, of course, war crimes being committed. So as a result, he was inspired from this. He published a book called A Memory of Solferino. It talks about the horrors of war. So he proposed that there should be a permanent relief agency for humanitarian aid in times of war. And then he proposed that this agency will be neutral, will be treated with neutrality by the government so that it can provide aid, without discrimination during war. So the Geneva Conventions are now a series of treaties, na nilagdaan ng mga bansa on the treatment of civilians, prisoners of war, and soldiers who are otherwise rendered hors de combat, incapable of fighting. So the first convention was established in 1864, and the 4 conventions that are the focus of today were adopted in 1949, and we also have additional protocols, as you may know. The significance of this is that these conventions form the core of the international humanitarian law. So it's not like the UDHR nandun na lahat. No, it's not like the ICCPR. When you talk about these conventions, you are now talking about international humanitarian law. So this regulates the conduct of armed conflict and seeks to limit its effects. This, as they have said, and in other terms, that the IHL is all about humanization of war. These are crucial to ensure humanitarian treatment in wars and protecting those who are not participating in hostilities. So let's talk about the conventions. The first convention protects the wounded and the sick, in the battlefield. It ensures that the individuals na medyo natamaan, they receive medical care without discrimination. It mandates the humane treatment of the wounded and the sick. Hindi lang dapat wounded, pati rin yung sick, regardless of their nationality or the side they fought for. So there are provisions for medical care. There are provisions for protection of medical personnel, establishments, transport, yung mga ambulances, emergency vehicles, and they should be allowed to perform their duties without hindrance. So sa first convention pa lang, it has already been established that medical personnel should not be harmed. And then there's a use of the emblem, which is the red plus or the red cross, or red crescent. Later we'll talk about the law that was adopted in the additional protocols, and of course the domestic law. Then inadopt yung red cross to be displayed on the medical facilities, vehicles, and personnel to signify that they are their status is protected. The second Geneva Convention is about the protection of the wounded, the sick, and shipwrecked members of armed forces at sea. Okay, so these are just illustrations to help you understand better. So it ensures that those who are injured or in distress at sea, no, sa dagat, receive the necessary assistance and protection. So mayroong provisions for rescue and care, the protection of hospital ships. Then ginagamit pa din yung Red Cross emblem, and this emphasizes, this convention, the second convention emphasizes the importance of maritime humanitarian assistance. It recognizes the unique challenges and dangers faced at sea. The third one is about POWs. Okay? This deals with the treatment of prisoners of war. It establishes comprehensive rules for the humane treatment of POWs. Their dignity, their safety, and judicial protection should be respected. Okay, so I could not help but think about the POWs that we have now, no? And sometimes a certain state has a POW who has been released, no? Their POW looks different from the other POWs that the other state has. Okay, so it shows you that treatment of prisoners is a bit different, no, in actual practice. So we're just talking about the law here, and the law provides for humane treatment of prisoners of war. Okay, they must be treated humanely at all times. Violence, intimidation, insults, and public curiosity are strictly prohibited. POWs are entitled to adequate food. Okay? Dapat may clothing sila, shelter, and medical care. The conditions of internment must be as favorable as those provided to the detaining power's own forces. Dapat magkapareho yung trato. Okay, as much as possible. This is what the law says. We're not talking about what is being practiced in theory. Okay? Then, the fourth convention is about protecting civilians, including those in occupied territories. So it rings a bell, somehow rings a bell, right? It's relative to the contemporary world, or to the contemporary topics that we have, or the current conflicts that we have now. So the fourth convention is specific for occupied territories. Okay? The occupying power must ensure the provision of food, medical care, and other essential services to the civilian population. Okay? The rights and protections of civilians must be upheld. Okay? And then there is this prohibition of deportation. Bakit? Because deportation, ida-deport mo sarili nilang bansa yan. Okay? So the law here, the fourth convention, provides for the prohibition of deportation. What is deportation? This is the forcible transfer of civilians from the occupied territories, no, to other places. So the convention underscores the importance of protecting non-combatants. These are civilians that we're talking about, and ensuring that civilians are not targeted or unduly harmed during armed conflicts. Okay, so I know you've already discussed the principles, but the principles of distinction comes to mind. So dapat nagdi-distinguish ng isang state yung mga hindi combatant sa combatant. Okay? So the Geneva Conventions collectively form the core of international humanitarian law. This sets out the legal standards for humanitarian treatment during war. So they establish protections for those who are not participating in hostilities, the wounded, shipwrecked, prisoners of war, and civilians. Okay? So ang goal talaga ng IHL for our non-students here who are watching is to mitigate the suffering caused by armed conflicts and ensure that basic human rights are respected even in times of war. Okay, so the key principles here: humanity, ensure humane treatment of all individuals, impartiality, dapat walang diskriminasyon na base sa nationality, race, religious belief, class, or political opinions. Okay? So yun. Neutrality. The agencies, those who implement IHL must not take sides in the hostilities or engage in controversies of a political, racial, religious, or ideological nature. And independence. Okay? So these principles here are also being practiced by an INGO called ICRC. I'm sure you have heard of them. They have already established their presence. They're even in Gaza right now. So despite na binobomba na sila, no, yung opisina nila, yung mga tao nila, if you read their words, if you follow them on Instagram, no, they still practice independence to a fault. No, they even try to be, of course, that's one of their mandates, no, na maging neutral sila. But your own people are being killed. No, so all they can say is that we're being killed and we condemn these atrocities. Okay, so if you have Instagram, you can follow them at ICRC and you read their statements. So today, some of their personnel were harmed, no, by the hostilities in Gaza right now. So the additional protocol. So kulang pa yung mga conventions. So dinagdagan. Okay? So protocol 1 is protection of victims of international armed conflict. So this supplements the Geneva Convention by providing additional protocols. It aims to ensure the safety and humane treatment of individuals affected by international wars. So medyo naisip natin ngayon yung Ukraine-Russia war. So this enhanced the protection for civilians. No, bawal yung inaatake yung civilian population. It prohibited attacks on civilian objects like hospitals, schools, universities. It emphasized the principle of distinction. Okay, so attacks on civilian infrastructure like schools, hospitals, places of worship, even mosques, churches are strictly prohibited. Okay, so in Gaza right now, no, walang there's no distinction. Churches, Christian churches, the Catholics are being harmed. Catholic worshippers and their places of worship are being harmed as long as they are in Gaza. And by the way, mayroon pong Palestinian Christians. Okay, they are not all Muslims. So these are indiscriminate attacks, which is strictly prohibited by Protocol 1. Okay, so indiscriminate attacks that do not or cannot distinguish between military targets and civilians are prohibited. So the protocol mandates that all feasible cautions must be taken to avoid or
Sound has been cut.
Okay. Prosecutor, you're unmuted. Hello? Am I still clear? Thumbs up naman dyan. Thank you. So Protocol 2 is the protection of victims of non-international armed conflicts. Siguro na-discuss na to. Diba, dalawa lang. In my class, we talk about IAC and NIAC. Okay, so this one is for IAC, okay, or I mean NIAC, or non-international armed conflicts. So, yun. And then Protocol 3 is the adoption of an additional distinctive emblem. So dito, meron tayong cross, okay? And I'm not sure how is it there in Iligan or in the nearby places, but here in Basulta, when kami dati, no, meron kaming first aid kit. Since may cross siya, no, my cousin back then tried to erase it by using a pen. Kasi nga, it has it has religious connotations. Although the ICRC says or maintains na hindi naman yan neutral naman yung cross na yan eh. But to some Muslims, no, it could have other connotations. So in Protocol 3, it introduced additional distinctive emblems, the red crystal, okay, and the red crescent. Okay? So to avoid yung may apprehensions, no, baka pag may tumulong sa kanila naka-cross, uy, baka ano to, they might harm me. So inad din yung red crystal and the red crescent. Okay, so they can be used to mark medical and humanitarian personnel facilities and can be transports, no, indicating their protected status. So yun lang naman yung meaning niya. When these emblems like this one, when you see this they have protected status, or their status is quote unquote protected. So in 2013 we passed a law here in the domestic law. This is the doctrine of transformation, RA 10530. You know, despite the existence of an international law, we passed our own law protecting the emblems. Okay, so the Red Cross and other emblems act. Why do I say protecting? Because you can't just use this randomly and use it in times of conflict. Okay, perfidiously. What is perfidiously? Yung patridor ba? Patridor. Perfidy is one of the offenses in RA 9851. So for perfidious use of the Red Cross, no, of the red crescent, or the red crystal emblem, or a protective device, or a distinctive signal which does not result in death or serious harm, is punishable by reclusion temporal. Okay? So makukulong ka pa if you will use these symbols perfidiously, and ang fine niya aabot pa ng 1 million pesos. So you can check RA 10530 if you wish. So now let's go to the other half of the lecture. You know, we've discussed, or we have appreciated what are the general the Geneva Conventions. Now let's go to the application in contemporary conflicts. So Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So I assume there are Muslims here, no? So as Muslims, medyo alam nyo na to, but for the general public, no, they have to read more into this. No? As Muslims, we have to, for our Palestinian brothers and sisters, we have to be able to relay, no, to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in an objective manner. History lang. You just base it on facts. So this is a long-standing and deeply rooted political and territorial dispute with significant human rights implications. Okay, so you can go back to early 20th century. There is Jewish and Arab nationalism in the region of Palestine, which used to be part of the Ottoman Empire, and then after World War I, the British mandate, it became a British mandate, and which led to the increase of Jewish immigration, and then yun nga, no, they were welcome there, and it increased the tension between Arab and Jewish communities. Parang iba na yung plano nila, right? So in 1947, we had the UN Partition Plan, which was unfair. In fact, no, ilan lang yung Jews doon, pero mas compared to the Palestinians, if you compare the percentage, but the partition of the whole country, of that whole area, is lopsided in favor of the Jewish, of the Jews. So it led to the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, and then the establishment of the State of Israel. Okay, so some of our grandmothers, grandfathers are even older than the State of Israel. So since then, there have been several wars, uprisings, or intifadas. There has been intermittent peace efforts resulting in significant human suffering and displacement. So as even I know, yung mga posts ko on my social media, yung mga posts ko nung college pa, lumalabas sa memories, no, Facebook memory ko, I've been posting about Palestine since 2011, 2012, since nagka-Facebook ako, and it's unfortunate that until now that we still don't have a free Palestine. So this whole conflict, it resulted in numerous human rights issues. So let's go to and yun nga, no, as I've discussed a while ago, the conventions mention the application of IHL in occupied territories. Okay? So kung application lang ang pag-uusapan, IHL applies here. Okay, that's why we have the presence of the ICRC, or the International Committee on the Red Cross. That's why the ICJ has stepped in, the ICC has stepped in, the UN Human Rights Council has stepped in, numerous INGOs, Amnesty International, Oxfam, you name it. No, they are there to observe. They have already monitored several violations of international humanitarian law. So the key provisions here, ano yung i-apply natin? Of course, the tenets of IHL. So, but more specifically, when it's an occupied territory like Palestine, the occupying powers must protect the rights of civilians, ensuring their safety, dignity, and basic needs such as food, medical care, and shelter. So what do we have there in Gaza? Hindi ka pwede mangisda without a permit. If you try to fish without a permit, you get arrested, and who knows if you get your day in court. Okay, which is another violation. And then you get deprived of water. Ano yung sabi ng defense minister nila? We will deprive them. There will be no food, no fuel, no water, no medical, no shelter, because they have already dehumanized Gazans and Palestinians in general. Okay, but I'm a bit losing track here. But I want to focus on what the conventions say. The conventions prohibit the collective punishment, okay, or punishing individuals for actions they did not commit. Again, how many? The death toll has now reached 37,000. So are all of those 37,000 people, including children, members of Hamas? Are all of them combatants? Okay, and the provisions of the Geneva Conventions also provide for respect for property. So destruction of civilian property is forbidden unless absolutely necessary. Now we've seen clips on TikTok, on Twitter, social media. What do they do with the houses there? Military personnel, they smash windows, they smash memorabilia, they defecate in the mosques. So there is absolutely no respect for property in violation of the Geneva Convention. Okay, so the Geneva Conventions apply to the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories, including, it's not just Gaza, okay? Right now the focus is in Gaza. They're bombing Gaza. But this also applies to the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and more importantly now, the Gaza Strip. Okay, so these conventions here mandate the protection of Palestinian civilians and their rights amidst the ongoing conflict. So let's just go through a few lists. No, ano yung mga specific incidents? I'm sure you've heard of this. No, last April 23. I'm not gonna list all kasi kung lilista natin lahat, abutin tayo ng 1 week. Okay, this is just during the recent siege against Gaza. No, let's just take it from October 7 daw, October 7, which is their 9/11. No, that's what the press release says. So my mass grave in Al Nasser and Al Shifa Hospital, no, according to Palestinian authorities, hundreds of corpses were discovered in mass graves at the 2 hospitals in Gaza. Okay. And then April 1 near Deir al-Balah, central Gaza. This is one of the the most shocking things, no, that has been done in Gaza. World Central Kitchen is an INGO. They provide food for the refugees, for the victims, no. So there, some of them are from Australia, from America. So they were there to cook for people, no, to cook food, to give relief to the people of Gaza. So the 3 cars, no, of WCK, or World Central Kitchen, were clearly marked, but they were bombed, no, with there was an allegation na this was really a deliberate attack, no, because sabay-sabay tatlong. It's okay if siguro isa they could have just they can there that's plausible deniability, but when you bomb 3 vehicles at the same time in separate areas, that's a calculated airstrike. So again, a violation of human rights, international humanitarian law, and of course human rights, needless to say. So the UN, no, recent lang to, a few days ago, they released a report that is Israeli use of heavy bombs in Gaza raises serious concerns under the laws of war. So the UN Human Rights Council or Office published an assessment that the IDF attacks last year led to a high number of civilian fatalities and widespread destruction of civilian objects. So ito lang, no, as part of one of the ways to pressure a country in international humanitarian law is name and shame lang. Okay, they cannot penalize Israel. So the UN report raises serious concern. Ganun lang, raises concern, condemnation under the laws of war with respect to the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precautions in attack. So obviously the report, no, which is from an independent body like the UN Human Rights Office, they have verified 218 deaths from these 6 attacks and said information received indicated the number of fatalities could be much higher. Okay, again, a violation of the principle of distinction, proportionality, and precaution. So, and another effort here from the international community, the fiscal, later pala, sorry. Let's just talk about first the Human Rights Council. So they also issued, they have stated here that on June 12, the UN, I'm sorry, I can't read. The Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel, released a report that they found evidence of violence or violations of IHL. And then here, the ICC prosecutor Khan, no, he applied for arrest warrants in the situation in the state of Palestine. So he issued a statement. Hindi lang po hindi lang mga taga-Israel yung ibinigyan or inapplyan ng arrest warrant. Okay? So they also applied for members or for the leaders of Hamas because they think they are also guilty of violating what statute? This is the Rome Statute. Okay? So here, Prosecutor Khan, no, applied for warrants of arrest for Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, and Yoav Gallant, which is the Minister of Defense. So he concludes, no, as prosecutor, that they bear criminal responsibility for the war crimes against humanity committed in the territory of the state of Palestine. So ano ba yung mga crimes na nakalista dito? Kung baga kung baga sa practice natin, this is in the information. So what did the information state? Willfully causing great suffering, starvation as a method of warfare, willful killing contrary to Article 8.2 AI of the Rome Statute, intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population as a war crime, extermination, and or murder. So the list goes on. Mahaba yung listahan ng information for the crimes that they are charging Benjamin Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, and the other, including the high-ranking officers of Hamas like Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Diab Ibrahim Al-Masri, and Ismail Haniyeh. So this is for the attacks last October 7. So yun. No? So let's now go to the Russo-Ukrainian conflict naman. No? Let's just try to give an overview of both conflict and discuss later on how international humanitarian law can be applied. Although we have already applied, we talked about the application of IHL in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but let's delve more now to the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. So here, this began in 2014. No, may issue na sila sa Crimea, and of course, this is the conflict escalated. No, with Russia's annexation of that territory, yung Crimea, and support for separatist movements in eastern Ukraine. So the ongoing conflict has resulted in the significant military confrontations, territorial disputes, and humanitarian crises. So they have launched an attack, no? Magti 3 years na yung war between Russia and Ukraine, and we've had the president or the prime minister of Ukraine visit the Philippines a couple of weeks ago. No, he had a talk with President BBM. So yun, parang may hinihingi ata. I'm not sure, but he came here. He went to the Philippines to visit and to ask for help in their ongoing war against Russia. So that's why you have to be very careful, no, as the architect of our foreign policy. The president has to be careful with his actions. It could have implications with our row, no, with the People's Republic of China. So in terms of international humanitarian law, as I've said, this also applies, as this is an IAC. Okay, IAC siya. This is an international armed conflict. So again, the conventions mandate the humane treatment of individuals not participating in hostilities, including the wounded, the prisoners of war, and civilians. And the combatants who are captured must be treated according to the Third Geneva Convention, as we have previously stated, which protects them from violence, torture, coercion, and they should receive adequate food, shelter, and medical care. So the Fourth Geneva Convention provides similar protections also for civilians, prohibiting targeting them, forced displacement, and collective punishment. Okay. So there's been numerous documented violations of the Geneva Conventions in this conflict also. So you can Google the siege of Mariupol into 2022. Maraming namatay na civilian, no, marami ring infrastructure na nawasak, with allegations that they are deliberately targeting civilian facilities. Okay, mayroon ding mga mass graves and summary executions that were reported. Okay, and these are being monitored by the UN and the ICRC, and they are calling for the independent investigations and accountability for these war crimes. So this is one of the findings based from the website of the UN. So the ongoing hostilities are an IAC, no, to which the full range of relevant IHL treaties apply, ang sabi sa report. So Russia and Ukraine are parties to the Fourth Geneva Conventions of 1949 and of the Additional Protocol 1 of 1977. So since they are signatories, they are more than bound to the provisions of the treaty, the conventions. Okay, this provides well-established rules on targeting and sparing civilians and civilian objects from the effects of hostilities to the extent possible. So this include the obligation of, as you have said, distinction between civilians and combatants and civilian objects and military objectives. And needless to say, paulit-ulit, but this is what it's all about. There should be a prohibition on indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks. And there is a duty for states, signatories to the convention, to take precautions in attack. Okay, so how do you, the question here, bakit may IHL pa tayo? Parang hindi naman na-follow. What's the point of having IHL, no? We've talked about what is prohibited, what is distinction, what is the duty to take precautions and all. Talked about the principles, well and good. But how come certain countries can just get away with it? Again, we have enforcement issues. Okay, we have to the reality is different from what is in theory. No, in theory there should be in the perfect world with IHL implemented, walang mamamatay na bata, walang mamamatay na inosente. Okay, but we have enforcement issues. So number one, sovereignty. Okay, sovereignty and political will. States, no, just like the Philippines, no, we can refuse the entry of international bodies to investigate in when they want to investigate our human rights violations. Political will, no? If we don't want, wala. Pag gusto natin, pwede talaga. So political will is often lacking when it comes to holding violators accountable. They want to get away with it, and they can because they have their own sovereignty and they have the political will to avoid accountability. And we have limited enforcement mechanisms. Okay? International bodies can monitor, can name and shame, can report, but they cannot enforce the laws themselves. Okay? Prosecutor Khan of the ICC cannot go there and bring his own PNP, or there's no world police to come and arrest Netanyahu or the members of the Hamas. Okay? So they can only monitor and report. They cannot enforce the laws themselves without cooperation from national government. So what did the US say? They condemned the members of the ICC when they applied for the arrest warrant of for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu. Ano pa yung ginawa nila? The US invited Netanyahu to speak before the US Congress. So that's another hindrance, yung political will. They have so many backers. The more powerful countries are complicit in the violation of IHL. So wala. And there are also resource constraints, no? As much as we'd like to think that these INGOs are rich, no, because they're white in skin and they seem to be able to afford so many things, no? The pay is good. They face resource constraints also. And the UNRWA, or the UN Refugee Agency, was defunded by some of the states. Okay? Medyo konti na nga lang yung financial capacity nila, nag-defund pa ang ilang mga states or countries. So, we have enforcement issues. So,
This meeting
we
is
have to
being recorded.
recognize these challenges, no, in ensuring compliance with the Geneva Conventions. Many states and non-state actors fail to adhere to these rules. No? Sovereignty concerns and a lack of political will further complicate enforcement efforts, as states may resist external interference. Okay, just like what we're doing with the ICC, diba? We withdrew from the Rome Statute, and then the opposition would like the president to avert any investigation of the human rights violations being committed here. So, yun. Additionally, international bodies have limited direct enforcement mechanisms. Okay? So, international bodies also have a role here. So, the UN, ICRC, INGOs, other non-government organizations, no, they have been monitoring. They play a crucial role, okay? Because sometimes videos can be altered, pictures can be manipulated, to tell something. These independent bodies, when they monitor compliance, these are important. The truth has to be established. Okay, so the UN, the ICRC, through the UN Human Rights Council, they collect evidence, they document violations, and report their findings to the international community. So ano nangyayari? Wala din. This naming and shaming, and it could just be ignored again because of sovereignty issues which interfere with the enforcement. So international bodies use their findings to advocate, documentation and advocacy, to advocate for compliance and bring attention to violations, often prompting international responses. Okay? What else? But it's not all hope is lost, no? Kung meron man, no, this could be the way out, no, to hold certain countries accountable. There could be diplomatic pressure. Other countries can boycott, for example, what the countries like South Africa has done. Spain, Colombia. Despite na konti lang sila, that's still diplomatic pressure against Israel. Okay? Some European countries, for example, in the magkaiba, these are two separate scenarios. In the Ukraine-Russo war or conflict right now, you have the US backing the country of Ukraine, the UK for Ukraine, France is for Ukraine, and there are other power dynamics that we don't have the time to unfortunately discuss tonight. But these are diplomatic pressures. This can, if they exert it, they can pressure a certain country to comply with the Geneva Conventions. Okay? So they can either pressure them to comply, or they can either stay silent and be complicit with its violation. So dalawa din. There are two sides to every coin. And there can be economic sanctions. Okay, remember Iran, there's an embargo. North Korea, there are economic sanctions against them. So this can be used to force compliance. Yun nga lang, hindi siya nagagamit in the correct and in the correct and the most righteous way possible. No? As much as we want to, dapat may economic sanctions na, okay, against a country like Israel, against Russia, or against any country that violates IHL. Okay, they did it with North Korea. Why can't they do it with Israel? Again, power dynamics that we can't discuss. We're just here for the legal, for the legalities of the provisions here. And there can be military interventions. These have been done in the past. What they did with Iraq when they invaded Iraq, in 1991, when Iraq was bullying Kuwait. They went also to Vietnam for peacekeeping operations. Although the last righteous war that the US have gone into, I think, is to avert the axis of evil, or the Axis powers back in World War II. That's a military intervention. In extreme cases, military intervention can be used to enforce compliance. Now let's talk about accountability and justice. Now we have the ICC. We often hear this. We have the ICJ. The ICC, sometimes nako-confuse yung tao because parang pareho lang, no? ICC, ICJ. But these are two different animals. Okay. The ICC works to hold perpetrators accountable for violations of international humanitarian law. Yung mga individual. Okay? That's why the ICC, I'm not trying to be political here, but let's stick with the facts. Duterte is afraid of the ICC because it's not going to hold the entire Philippines as a state accountable. It's more on prosecuting an individual for violations of human rights, So the same way, the ICC is for individuals like Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Galal. ICJ is more on for hearing the disputes between states. So that's why when South Africa filed a complaint before the ICJ, the World Court or the ICJ took cognizance of it, and they have made I forgot the term, but they have issued a ruling. It's short of in last January. In a ruling in January, the World Court or the ICJ issued an edict, to prevent genocidal acts, to refrain from genocidal acts in Gaza. Okay? And then we have, that's the difference, ICJ and ICC. So we also have the different in enforcement and compliance. The ICJ, when they rule, it is binding on the states involved in the dispute. So for example, if we have a favorable decision between Israel and South Africa, that is binding on the states involved. Okay? However, it relies on the UN Security Council. Ano na naman tong UN Security Council? These are the 6 countries who are the peacemakers, who are tasked to maintain the peace in the entire world. Problema lang, they're not doing their job effectively. So the UN Security Council, yung China, US, Russia, France, Germany, they enforce the decisions of the ICJ, which can still be challenging. Why? Because may political consideration pa rin. There are still power dynamics involved that we don't necessarily understand, Kasi may mga patago. So, states are expected to comply with ICJ rulings voluntarily. Sa ICC naman, wala silang own enforcement mechanisms. It relies on the cooperation from the states. Okay? So if, for example, in our case, if the president cooperates to arrest the former president, provide evidence and enforce sentences, that's it. Ganon yung pag-enforce. So the challenges here is kung ayaw mag-comply ng isang state. Okay? So yun, that's the whole of it. So my final points, I'm not gonna bore you for an hour, but to summarize, the Geneva Conventions are foundational to IHL. They provide the protections during armed conflict. Their significance cannot be overstated, especially with the worldwide conflict that we are facing now in Israel, in Palestine, in Russia, in Ukraine. Enforcing these conventions is still a challenge. Okay? That's why we have to advocate always for awareness and compliance. In our own little way, we can work towards upholding the principles of the Geneva Conventions. Like this one, we are informing ourselves, we're informing other people about IHL to ensure the humane treatment of all individuals in times of conflict. So that's the last slide. Thank you very much, MSU Iligan. So if you have questions, please feel free to unmute. Thank you.
Let us all give a virtual big hand to Attorney Almannajar L. Namla LLM for such a thought-provoking keynote. Thank you, sir. I'm sure many of you have questions and ideas sparked by this talk. We hope you found the talk as engaging as we did. This is your chance to dive deeper into the topics covered, so please feel free to ask any questions. If you have any question to our speaker, please click your virtual hand. Yes, Miss Pahe, please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Good evening po, Attorney. I would like to ask po, considering the rise of technology, I was wondering if yung forms of conflict like cyber attacks, how can we possibly apply and adopt the existing international humanitarian law to new types of warfare like cyber attacks and drone strikes? Is this like kind of attacks also covered by Geneva Conventions, or it is only covered by special laws based on the countries? Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's a very good question, Miss Page. No, currently, I've also looked into this because right now, if you observe there are cyber attacks being done by Russian hackers, by Israeli hackers, and Palestinian hackers against each other. There is a war going on in the cyberspace. Oh, sorry, my mic is not my main account is not working yung mic ko. But I hope you can hear me. Oh, so right now, the last time I checked, it's not specifically covered by the Geneva Convention. Okay, so there's still process of researching into it, looking into it, and in the future, who knows? There could be another additional protocol to supplement the current Geneva Conventions and the additional protocols that will that that applies, no, that applies the rules of cyber warfare, so to speak. So with the use of drones right now, with the use of uh, cyber attacks, no, on websites against countries, it could be in the future that they will have a international humanitarian law which contemplates cyber war. But right now, in my opinion, there's still no law. The current the current Geneva Conventions do not contemplate of cyber attacks.
Thank you po, Attorney.
I hope that's clear. Sorry, my Zoom app crashed. Okay, so yes, thank you for that very thoughtful question.
Attorney, I think she also mentioned about drone attacks.
Yes.
Not a cyber war, but it's still a physical
Recording in progress.
Hello. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. No. It could still be it could mean a physical attack. No. You can undermine critical infrastructure by the use of cyber attacks, and it could mean a physical attack. No. But yes, I think a cyber attack that will lead to harm. No.
No, I think she mentioned about drone attacks. So there's a difference between drone attacks and cyber attacks.
Okay. Yes, I lump them into one because I've read a material that covers both. And when I was researching to present this topic, that yes, no, it still uses, drone attacks are different. It still uses the technology using wirelessly, diba? Wirelessly, it's using uh, a structure that is virtual in nature. Kasi someone from America can bomb someone in another country, right? With just the use of a joystick in their own base, safe and sound in America. So based on my recent reading, that can still be a violation of IHL. But as to cyber attacks, no, there's still yet to be a final we don't have yet the additional protocols, no? So yes, that's a very thoughtful question. Maybe in the future, abangan na lang natin, baka may mga additional protocols that contemplate these types of attacks. I hope I answered your question. Thank you, prosecutor, for your input. So, yeah.
Any other question? Yes, Miss Achacoso, please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Hi, sir. Good evening. So, based on you mentioned earlier that it's very hard to impose the rules which are set in the Geneva Convention. I want to know about your inputs with regards to how the Geneva Convention improved upon the previous international humanitarian law with respect to the protection which were given, especially to the medical professionals who were giving aids during conflicts, sir.
I'm sorry, I did not get yung sa the middle part, medyo nag-crack. You meant how can the Geneva Convention?
Sorry, sir. How did the Geneva Convention improve upon the previous international humanitarian law, sir?
Okay. You mean how can the Geneva Convention be improved to further protect medical workers or medical workers in the battlefield? Is that what you meant?
Yes, sir.
So I think that if you read the conventions, it's already clear and explicit. I don't think it can be more explicit that the medical personnel, the units, the transports are all protected. No, they are protected under all circumstances at all times. So they cannot be attacked or captured. They cannot be held hostage. No, so that they can carry out their duties without fear of harm. So how can it be improved? I think it has to provide for better enforcement mechanisms, no? So, but the thing is, we've already discussed na mahirap talaga siyang i-enforce. There should be a framework for the protection and facilitation of medical service in the battlefield. There should be siguro better information, I think. But the thing is, people know, these states know that medical personnel are not to be harmed, but still there's a deliberate, calculated attack against them. So to answer the question, how can it be improved? Medyo it's a question of policy, no? How do we add additional enforcement mechanisms, or do we provide for can the Geneva Conventions provide for its local application, meaning there could be local laws like ours, like us here in the Philippines? Siguro pwedeng ganun, no? Sino-sino yung pipirma sa additional protocol or sa Geneva Convention, there could be a provision that will force the signatory states to enact local laws, no? Local laws providing for criminal penalties for those who will violate its provisions. So that way there could be better protection. We can afford better protection for medical personnel, because as you may have already researched or tackled in your subject, we have RA 9851, which is the domestic version of the international humanitarian law, which also, the last time I checked, please verify for me, provides for penalties in cases of in cases where there is intentional harm or deliberate harm committed against medical personnel or any person who is of protected status. So I hope I answered your question. Ms. Achacoso.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other question from the audience? None?
Yan. Wala na.
Hello po. May audible?
Yes.
Attorney,
Yes, Mr. Bashar.
alam ko na po na gas-gas na po kasi ito, di ba, for how many years. I also heard a lot of critics. I also did research about the Palestine and the Palestine and Israel conflict.
Yes.
I'm just interested po on your own opinion how to finally end the conflict in Palestine and Israel po.
How do we there should be liberation. Okay, liberation. There should be the Israeli forces, any Israeli entity should pull out from the Palestinian territories. Remove the walls, okay? Allow free movement for the Palestinians and allow for a separate government to flourish, no? To govern themselves as their own as Palestinian people. There should be a separate government for them. Okay, right now there's no Palestinian passport, di ba? Everyone, if you're a Palestine, you want to travel elsewhere, you're forced to have Israeli citizenship. You're gonna have to have an Israeli passport, like much like Nas Daily. So that I think is the best way to resolve this, because if we maintain the status quo wherein you're gonna flatten a whole country with millions of people, children included, you're willing to commit ethnic cleansing. That's not the way to peace. You're just creating more and more members of what you call Hamas terrorists, no? And then you're gonna play victim when you get attacked. So that's just part of the lawful resistance. You're gonna get attacked every once in a while because people are helpless. So the key to peace in these territories is to liberate Palestine, the Palestinian territories and their people. Thank you for that question.
Thank you po.
I think
Do
that's
we have
it.
any other question? Yes, Miss Malawani.
Good evening po, attorney. I just want to ask po, since I know that Philippines follows law on neutrality, pero we are also one of the signatory of IHL laws. I just want to know ano po yung stand ng Philippines regarding this blatant violation of international humanitarian law, because some other countries, as you have just said also, na they have showed their side through those diplomatic pressure na nag-boycott sila ng mga products as well as not receiving Israeli citizens. So ang Philippines po, what are we doing po in regard with this po?
Yes, yeah. Okay, thank you. For that question, the last time I've checked, no, we've been flip-flopping in our support, no? Sometimes we in one instance we voted, we abstained, no, from the vote in the UN General Assembly, the resolution calling for the cessation of the hostilities in Gaza. So nag-abstain tayo doon. So that could mean that we are complacent as a country. Our foreign policies to be complicit despite the killings. But in a few months later, another resolution was brought to a vote. We voted yes, no, to halt the for the cessation of the conflict, no, for de-escalation, for a humanitarian ceasefire. So far yun lang. The last time I checked, I'm not gonna pretend like I know everything, no. But the last time I checked, that's the latest that I know of. We're in the Philippines as a country, as part of our diplomatic stand. No, we voted in favor, at least for a humanitarian ceasefire in the Palestinian territories in Israel. Thank you.
Do we have any other question? Would like to call in, okay. Miss Makamimis for our last question. Thank you.
Hello, I'm audible.
Yes po, you are,
Okay.
Miss Makamimis.
Good evening po, attorney. I don't think so na I'm related uh, to this current topic. For this current topic po sa ang question ko po. I'm just curious about po with the recent recognition of other countries to the statehood of the Palestine, does it affect po ba, or in your opinion po ba, somehow does it affect po the statehood of the Palestine with this recognition po ng other countries po? And
Yes,
the
yeah.
application po ng decision ng ICJ about the war crime po ng Israel, since one of the problem po is yung statehood ng Palestine, kaya hindi po siya totally na affect yung decision ng ICJ po.
Yes, no, of course it enhances or it legitimizes, no, the state of Palestine when a country like Spain, when some countries recognize the statehood of Palestine. No? So you may know, in your public international law, recognition theory is one of the ways to create a state. No? Other countries have to recognize you as a state, and the latest one I think is Kosovo. No, Kosovo. So it will it enhances the legitimacy of and the political status of Palestine on the global stage kung mayroong recognition, no, from other countries. And as far as when you have recognition, when you are recognized, you can get access to international courts, no. So that's why one of the you brought up a very good point, where in the state of Palestine, if they get recognized, no, they can have access to the courts, to the international courts like the ICJ. Kasi kung wala silang recognition, other countries will have to sponsor them, like what's happening right now. South Africa, for example, as they are a recognized state, they brought the case of the Palestinian people before the ICJ. So,
Thank you po, attorney.
thank you.
Attorney, we have a question po from Ms. Palt. This will be our last question for tonight.
Yes.
How do international legal mechanisms reconcile enforcement challenges regarding the Geneva Conventions in territories where ICC jurisdiction might be limited due to non-membership by key stakeholder?
So yun, I think I have mentioned earlier, but not quite exhaustively. So the challenge really there is the cooperation of the states. No, enforcement of any international law relies on couple of cooperation by other states, like those states in the UN, seated in the UN Security Council, those the member states of the UN. No, so those are the usual the steady challenge, no, the steady challenge or the steady barrier, no, against enforcement, yung cooperation and the other political dynamics that we can perceive, no, from the conflict. So it's a play of there's so many variables at play, and that affect the enforcement mechanisms or any attempt to enforce the provisions of the Geneva Convention. I hope I answered your question.
So thank you for those engaging questions, and special thanks to
Thank you.
Attorney 𝐷𝐷𝐷𝐷𝐷 for providing such comprehensive answers. Now, before we proceed to the next part of the webinar, good evening, Pros. May we ask Pros if you would like to share some thoughts regarding the subject for tonight's webinar.
I think we started at 6. It's already 7:26. Do we still have the attention span to listen to more lecture from me?
Wala na,
Parang
pros.
wala
Wala na ata.
attention span ng mga tao ngayon with all the gadgets and internet is like that of a goldfish, eh. So I think that the Attorney Namla's lecture should have complemented the lectures in the class. That's good, no? Listening to a different perspective, more or less the same content, but yeah. Just for the record, attorney, what's the difference? If it's committed in times of conflict, is it violation of humanitarian law or violation of human rights?
Ma'am, huwag naman ganyan. May grade ba ako dito?
Hindi kasi,
Magsisingko na lang ako.
I was looking at the BHRC, so human rights. Pero in
Human
times of
rights.
conflict,
Yun nga, ma'am, no? The application, although they are used interchangeably sometimes, no, like I did a while ago in my presentation, IHL is done during armed conflict. Human rights all the time. All the time, all the places ang human rights. Yes po.
I'm
sorry.
even national CHRD ng commission.
Yes. Diyan sa Iligan, CHR yung bahala sa inyo. Yun. CHR and BHRC. We work together naman in some areas. Pag may Bangsamoro. Yun, pros.
I think that's clear. I was looking at the news recently and I saw these 4 cops who were sentenced for the death of father and son somewhere in Caloocan, I think. This was a result of the previous administration's drug war. So
Yes.
they are not convicted under the revised penal code, but at the time of the Duterte administration, they would call this violations of human rights. So I hope you know the distinctions.
Yes. Yun, baka pwedeng masali sa ICC yung not sure.
Yeah,
We
evidence.
have to have all the facts and evidence ready.
Back to the
Thank you,
host.
Pros. Thank you, Attorney. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to honor the exceptional contribution of our esteemed keynote speaker. May I call on Ms. Janica for the reading of the citation of the certificate.
MSU
thank you.
Law Iligan 3L IHL class, academic year 2023 to 2024. Certificate of Appreciation is hereby awarded to Attorney 𝐔𝐬𝐚𝐩𝐿 𝐿NAMLA, LLM, for his invaluable insights, experiences, and expertise shared as resource speaker on the laws of war, a webinar on understanding the Geneva Convention of 1949 in the contemporary world. Given this 22nd day of June 2024 at Iligan City, Philippines, signed by Prosecutor Lauren Halilalao, IHL class professor. Let us give
Thank you.
another
Thank you so
round of
much.
virtual round of applause to Attorney 𝐔𝐬𝐚𝐩𝐿 𝐿NAMLA, LLM. We are truly grateful for the insights and knowledge you've shared with us today, Attorney. Your expertise and dedication have made a significant impact on all of us. As we come to the end of tonight's event, we encourage everyone to take time to reflect on the insights shared and consider how we can apply these lessons in our endeavors. And now to officially close tonight's webinar, I would like to invite Ms. Christine Ann Lozano, class representative of third year Tihanki, for the closing remarks.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Attorney. Good evening, Ross. So as we formally end this event, I would like to extend our gratitude to our speaker, Attorney Namla. We are forever thankful for your willingness to share your knowledge on this subject matter. I admit that the invite was pretty much last minute, but your prompt response has
The recording has
greatly
stopped.
pushed us to continue with this endeavor and to learn more from you, another expert from this field. Also, I would also like to thank our professor, Prosecutor Lau, for building our foundation of the complex world of international relations and the even more complicated web of international humanitarian laws. Your guidance has helped us understand the very real conflicts that the world is facing right now. And lastly, I would also like to thank all the participants for lending a few hours of your Saturday. I hope that you all have learned something from this webinar that we will keep forever, no? Especially that we are facing very harsh realities right now. And then there are also looming conflicts that are within our territory. So I hope we can have a better understanding, or we can better apply these lessons um, in our own situations. So again, I'm very thankful for each and every one of you, and I hope we all have a great day.
Thank you so much, Miss Christine, for those wonderful closing words. Your insights have perfectly encapsulated the spirit for today's event. To our professor, Prosecutor Lauren Halila, thank you for this opportunity po, Pros. And to all our attendees, thank you for your active participation. Your presence and engagement have been invaluable.
In behalf of third-year students of MSU College of Law Iligan Extension, we would like to thank everyone, and may you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you po. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Attorney Aman.
Thank you po.
Thank you,
po,
Prof.
Attorney.
Can we have
Thank you, Fiscal. Thank you.
Can we have a picture opportunity, please, everyone? Sige, kita na lang. Diyan, palihog ko dyan.
Who can take a screenshot for our class picture? Gamay akong screen. Can take
Okay,
a
ready?
Rent a car? No problem. AutoWorks Car Rental. Self-drive. With driver. Out of town. Worry-free. Free delivery. Free pickup. Free car wash. Automatic, manual transmission, and many to choose from. Hatchback. Sedan. 7-seater. SUV. Pickup. Van, and many more. We are located beside Katipunan Bank, Giwan, Zamboanga City. Call us now at 0966-427-3860 or visit us on Facebook, AutoWorks Car Rental.
Open 24/7.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. حياكم الله وبياكم. الحمد لله يريك بهيني معهد النجاح في تحفيظ القرآن وتعليم اللغة العربية بهالمبابا Zamboanga City. Alhamdulillah, hayaon magkulang maglabi imurid sing kami sukan hanggatos na ngadli bihain tay ipagtawagon salta sila way undugay kinangila buat malingkan mga Quran sing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ibasin ka hadithan sa Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam karena hapalon nila ini ibasin pangadjiun nila sin sarayaw-rayo pagpangadji hapamaham sin mga sila salafus salih hapang Hindu sin mga kaguruan sa kita niyo mutakharrij graduate sila kaungkatan din ha mga kahula-hulaan biya nahula sa Saudi Arabia mamlaka dami ka nahula Jordan dami ka nahula sa Sudan Africa hafizahumullah sila inaghindu rihayn ma'azita dalam hayat ko bang-aon din kanyo ta mabaya ka magpasampay sa karayawan in mahad ini yari halas barangay sa Zamboanga City halimpapa Naam salta maray ubaha mahang pagkaabutan si mga sila amuin magdara karayawan buat malainkan din ang mga mani tao amuin mag-ikhlas turan. Ahlan wa sahlan kamu tumukbal mari amuin karayawan atau akan tatabangan dia nasin pagkailo amuin pagkaon sila adlaw ibang sindom bugas-bugas sila menjadi dahon yumaririhain insyaallah taala. Ahlan wa sahlan in ma'had ini dumauhat atau akan tumay makaniya karena sin Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
فالكل أنصت للتلاوة مطرقا يا حافظ القرآن لست بحافظ حتى تكون لما حفظت مطبقا ماذا يفيد
Imbaitun namu kamu sumud pa face hermoso TV karena like kita nyo iban share kita nyo in face ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
نجاتنا فتمسكي بعراه كي لا نغرقا ولتجمعي حول الكتاب شتاتنا حتى نزيل تناحرا وتفرقا ولتجعلي